So I've been watching a ton of Overwatch League and trying to find out the heroes that normally aren't that good and see how they're working in Overwatch League. And today we're going to be talking about Hanzo, and hopefully in the future I can talk about a lot of different characters in Overwatch League and how they're played. And if you have any certain character you want me to talk about, please do leave that in the comment section down below. But we're going to be talking about Hanzo, how he's played, how he works, and just kind of really go quickly through that. Now this will be on offense on Junkertown, and for the most part with Hanzo you only see him on offense on first point with really open maps. We have seen him in some other really jank positions and some other jank maps, but for the most part we've been seeing Hanzo a lot in Junkertown compared to a lot of the other maps. And as well, do get used to people only playing Hanzo on first point. They almost never stick to him for second point. After they die, they're going to switch, and a lot of the times they don't get way too much kills as this character. He's kind of played for a different reason. He can get a lot of kills, which is nice, but he doesn't always get a trillion picks, and a lot of people don't really play the super good flanky flankzo that some people like to do. Right here, Shanghai Dragons versus the Shock. Dragons is just going to stay on high ground, of course, as they always do. They don't have way too much to do with the Bastion, which is kind of a problem for them, I guess. And as well, what they do have, what the Shock has right now, is a Hanzo, which can give the Bastion vision of where he has to shoot at, and it makes it that the Bastion can't really just be jumped on and flanked on, because they will often have vision on that. So that's pretty nice, and that's one reason why I feel like he can be especially good on this point. As well, Bastion's going to get out that consistent damage, while Hanzo doesn't really like to focus on getting out that consistent damage, because, you know, the Bastion's kind of got that. So instead, he can focus on staying right behind the shields and trying to get headshots, trying to get scatter arrows, and trying to get random picks. That is kind of how Hanzo works, and I feel like he's best if you have another consistent DPS to play with, and that's kind of how it's going to work right here. Right now, of course, Dante's just playing right behind his team, right behind the shield. You can see him, I think, asleep right there, unfortunately. But he is just popping off a little bit. Maybe Bay gets a kill in the back line. That's nice. But as we see, 1 second, there we go. Dante does E the Orisa, or I think that's just a headshot, actually. But you can get a lot of kills on tanks, and that's one thing I want to mention. We often see Hanzo's actually going after the tanks when his teammates are, and then immediately switching to people in the enemy backline when he's just kind of pushing the cart. That's generally how this works. But yeah, Hanzo is kind of a tank killer right now in a lot of these matches, as if you kind of think about it, he can do around 300 damage with a scatter arrow, on damage boost at least, against Orisa, and that's almost good enough to kill her if he has some teammates helping you. Right now, they're going to focus on Baby Bay just kind of killing everybody because, you know, whatever. It's the DPS that's focusing a little bit further up. Dante, though, right there, gets another pick on the Orisa. And one thing I should mention as well, though, is that Dante will usually just push up with his team, and he won't go much further than his team. With someone like a flanker or somebody like a Widowmaker, like Baby Bay, he might push up a little bit more, but Dante, playing Hanzo, he will stay back, stay next to his team, and just, again, supply consistent scatter arrows, consistent arrows all over the place, and consistent sonic arrows, and that's all you really need to do. As well, don't expect way too much damage boost when you are playing this character. Right there, he's pushing around the corner a little bit, goes for a nice ult, and there we go, something that's also great about this character. If you know exactly where the enemy has to walk through to get back onto the point, you can often get a free first point as Hanzo by pushing them straight off the point, or, you know, just really shooting your dragon directly at where the enemies have to come through. And that's exactly what happened right there, and then you should probably engage immediately as you're doing that. You push the enemies to like half HP, and that worked out for them really well. And the Sand finishes, so Shock immediately gets the second point as well. But that ultimate would work just as good on first point, and that's often why people pick Hanzo. We're kind of going to finish it off right here, though. You know, they're going to keep pushing. The third point's a little bit more close, though. You know, there's more edges. It's kind of harder to play out this character. Right here, he's pushing around the side. Now with his team, gets picked off, and then he's eventually going to just switch off this character. And that's all the Hanzo that we're going to be seeing this game. But that's generally how we see players picking up this character, and that's generally how we see the Overwatch League kind of just working with Hanzo. And I feel like it does work decently well. You might not be that consistent DPS, you might be more focused on picks, but you still can be semi-consistent by taking out a lot of the tanks and by getting vision for your team. And that's just kind of how this character works. Now, other than just, you know, this exact gameplay, I also wrote down quite a few character tips that I feel like might be able to help you guys when trying to play Hanzo that I've gotten from this game and from just other Hanzo mains that I've been watching through the, you know, just through the days. But here we are with them as quickly as I can possibly get them out. Now, the first thing I'm going to say when you're playing Hanzo is that, as in this gameplay and really everything else, I'm going to say that Hanzo is usually quite a bit better on attack. He can work on defense, and I know that he is a defense type character, but getting picks is often a lot better on attack, and especially because Hanzo is so inconsistent, it's hard to consistently get your damage out and consistently get picks on defense, which you really need to do. But on offense, who cares if you miss 7 shots? If you finally get that 8th on a headshot on the Mercy, that's good enough. And that's why a lot of people only play him on offense, and especially in esports, where you need to always be consistent on defense. Yeah, you won't really see him way too much, and you probably will see a lot more Widowmakers. And I feel like Hanzo versus Widowmaker is kind of hard. You don't really want to go for those fights way too much, but how you can kind of beat that is by putting out a Sonic Arrow as the Hanzo and then just hiding behind shields and trying to spam at the Widowmaker. That's generally what you're going to be trying to see right there. Now, as well with Hanzo, you only really see him playing on open maps because there's a lot of potential jank going on. If it's a very close map, you might be able to see him against certain team comps, but not way too often. You can get a bit more easy scatter arrows, I guess, but in general, they like to play Hanzo in a lot more open maps just because there is more jank to be had. Start off, usually people try to play Hanzo on the first point, and then they kind of switch off of him. But then sometimes, if the map becomes open again, they might switch back onto Hanzo. I could think of maybe Numbani right here. You might want to play him on the first point on offense, get quite a few kills. Maybe the second point's a little bit too close for you, but then third point again opens up quite a bit. So you could try to play like that. And it's kind of problematic for yourself because you do have to waste a lot of your ult charge. But I mean, if you just switch right after you ult, which a lot of these Hanzo players are doing, that's going to be, just kind of good enough for you. Now, do remember again, though, that Hanzo's whole purpose is to get picks, and if you aren't doing that, you probably do want to switch off to a more consistent DPS, and if the enemy team is diving you way too hard, and you can't get the scatter arrows, like with a discorded scatter arrow on the enemy Winston, you might also want to switch in that situation. Now, another way that we do see Hanzo sometimes on defense, I guess, is that sometimes you might play Hanzo to counter a very specific character. I think Bastion is a really good example, or other problem heroes. You ask for the Discord Orb, from of course the Zenyatta, or the damage boost from your own Mercy. You get damage boosted, and you try to scatter arrow them. You can try that a few times, and I guess if it doesn't work, you might want to switch out that character. But otherwise, you can stay on him for a little bit for the rest of first point. Again, though, Hanzo is usually just meant to either kill a lot of tanks, get a lot of picks, or I guess, again, something I didn't mention earlier, take out a lot of problematic heroes, which is kind of nice. Now, of course, I did write this down, of course, stalling enemies at their spawn with their ult, or with your ult, that's a nice thing to be able to do. Flanking with the scatter arrow can also be a half-decent idea, I want to say, but if you are playing in a higher elo game, you don't see quite as much flank. So if you are in a very tight choke point where no one can happen to really do anything and you've just been kind of stuck there forever, that might be an okay time to finally try to flank, try to get something. And especially if you're like a Hanzo one trick that doesn't want to play anything else and the map's just not working for you at that point, then you might want to try to play a little bit of flank. But otherwise, you usually don't really want to try to go for that too much because it's just not super consistent. And Hanzo really does need his team in a lot of cases to play pretty well. He isn't quite a flanker, even though I say quite a people might say that he kind of is that. And I guess some final stuff to talk about is that, again, when you want to think about how you're playing your kit, at far range, just try to consistently try to get headshots and try to hopefully get some picks and consistently spam scatter arrows at where the enemies are usually going to, if no one else can happen to get those kills. Otherwise, just focus on the tanks. With all of his kills this game, they were on tanks, and Hanzo can just be a tank buster because their hitboxes are so easy to hit, but always make sure to either go for those headshots or try to get a instant scatter arrow. And also make sure that your other tanks on your team are actually helping you kill them, because you can kind of be healed through as this character. Once you get out your burst, you can't really finish off a lot of kills. But if you have a lot of team coordination, Hanzo can be one of the better tank killers in the game, which is kind of awkward to think about. But if you can get close up like that, especially on an open map like Junkertown, that can work greatly for you. And finally, when you are playing with a shield comp, which for the most part you should be trying to play with, you shouldn't really be trying to play Hanzo with a flank or with a dive comp or something like that. That's not that great with him. But if you are playing with a shield comp, try to stand quite a bit behind your shield, because you don't want to have the chance of just having somebody dive on you. But if the enemy keeps sending flankers at you again and again, like if they keep sending Widowmakers, which is kind of a flanker in the way a lot of people are playing in Overwatch League, or of course mainly Genji and Tracer, then just go right up next to your tanks. Oftentimes we saw Dante just staying right next to his tanks, and that makes it that your own tanks can feel a little bit more safe. It makes it that the enemy DPS can't get nearly as close, and it can kind of make so that, of course, you aren't going to die as easily because you have shields all over you and big fat hitboxes, but as well, you can kind of protect against certain characters like Reaper, because if the Reaper comes up close, hopefully you can one-shot headshot them. I guess that could be one final thing you want to think about while playing Hanzo. And here's the final stuff I'm going to say about Hanzo. I feel like Hanzo can be a pretty good character in the right situations. I wouldn't say that he's a great character to per se main, but if you do like playing him, there's quite a few first points on maps that he can work out really, really well. And I don't feel like he's unplayable as a main. He just is very inconsistent, and you have to play on maps or team comps that don't really care about the inconsistency, that can deal with it for a while, and then, you know, eventually be able to just kind of play around it, and hopefully you'll be able to get some picks after a certain amount of time. But I would probably recommend to play another, character kind of similar to him. If you want to play Zenyatta, I feel like that can be kind of nice with the projectiles, or even if you want to play Junkrat, that can also be really nice because Junkrat is a lot better in a lot of situations of the map. But Hanzo can also be a good switch off from Junkrat because sometimes Junkrat just can't get those medium to far range picks, while Hanzo can. Those might be some good heroes you want to pick up, and we saw with like Jake and a few other players, those were some really good duos that they kept switching between. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a little bit from this. I'll try to be talking about other characters in the future and hopefully have more clips to actually talk about because, yeah, we haven't seen way too much as Hanzo. And in the future, in the next video, I think I'm going to use at least 2 different clips of 2 different players to try to help you with that. But again, it was kind of hard to find this character, so I wanted to give you some more general advice. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Tell me who you want to see next time. And, of course, press the notification button or the subscribe button. As always, guys, have a wonderful day.